Imagine buying a brand new car. For months, everything works perfectly. Then one day, someone discovers that pressing a certain combination of buttons unlocks every car of that model. So, until the manufacturer learns about it and releases a fix, anyone who knows that trick can exploit it. That essentially is what a zero-day vulnerability is. But why is it called zero day? Why does these vulnerabilities exist in the first place? And why do companies pay millions of dollars just to learn about them? So by the end of this video, you'll understand what a zero-day vulnerability is and why they're so dangerous, how they're discovered, and what happens after they're found, and also something called as bug bounty program. So yeah, I'll also like try to do some Q&As as the things come along. But yeah, welcome. Here we break down complex text topics into simple, practical explanations that anyone can understand. So if you're into tech, AI, please consider subscribing because the aim is to hit like a million subscribers at the end of this year. And I am a little bit exhausted today because it's just like post 12 in the midnight. And but I really want to do it. I think it's like amazing topic, and I think these are the best slides ever made so far. But yeah, we'll try to do it. All right. So let's dive into it. What is a zero-day vulnerability? A zero-day vulnerability is basically a security flaw in software that the developers don't know yet. Because they don't know it yet, there's no patch or fix available, which gives attackers a chance to exploit it before it's repaired. So the name zero day simply, I would say, like it means that the developer had 0 days to fix the problem. But it doesn't make sense how one doesn't know what they're building, right? So the catch is developers know what they're intended to build, but they don't know all these unintended things that are happening because of billion other combinations in a code specifically, but there's also billion other things that are happening in a software, which I'm gonna cover in a bit. So imagine you build a huge mansion. I'm gonna go to the next slide and probably continue on that. All right, so I'm gonna take this example of building a mansion. So consider there like 10,000 rooms, thousands of doors, electric wiring done, hidden pipes, and then we have elevators and the maintenance tunnels, right? So it means like you know the blueprint, but months later, someone discovers that if you press button 7 on an elevator, and then if you hold the door for 3 seconds, it flips a breaker at the same time. So a hidden maintenance door would open up or unlock. But you didn't design that behavior on purpose. It just emerged from how all these different parts are moving together or interacting with each other, you know? So the software is the same because applications contain like millions or even like hundreds of millions of code. So they're built by thousands or hundreds of engineers over many years, and they also rely on third-party libraries. So some vulnerabilities only appear under very specific conditions that nobody tested or anticipated. Now, on to the next one. But why do zero-day vulnerabilities exist? Um, well, because like I said, there's like millions of code lines. And no matter how many developer testers or security researchers review that code, it's almost impossible to catch every mistake. Some bugs remain hidden for months or even years before someone discovers them. However, once the software company learns about the vulnerability, they begin developing and testing a security patch. So after that patch is released and users install it, the vulnerability is no longer considered a zero-day vulnerability. However, people who don't install the update may still remain vulnerable until they do, right? But then it also did bring me to a next question. I mean, I would ask this is like, is it like important to update patches that mobile apps forces all the time, or even like softwares on the desktops or laptops? But sometimes, are they also stealing data or slowing our hardware down over time? Because isn't that true? Well, the short answer for this would be security updates are generally important. I don't know, like as I say this, also as a cybersecurity professional and a software developer, it's just hard to like weigh in one or the other side. However, yes, security updates are generally important for installing purposes, but not every app update is purely about security. So I just made this breakdown of the types of examples on the updates that we usually receive. So first we have this security patch. Usually we should always install this, and they fix zero-day fixes, security flaws, privacy fixes. Then we have remote code execution fixes. Well, basically, they're just execution bugs, and there's other exploitable weaknesses as well. If you skip these updates, you may remain vulnerable even after the company has released a fix. Then we are on to the feature updates. These may include things like UI, AI features, or like new settings, or just minor bug fixes between a button or something like that. This is not a security fix, like you know what I mean. And then there's performance improvements and stuff like that. These are less urgent, so you can just do it whenever you feel like. And then there's updates usually do they like sort of slow down your devices? Well, sometimes yes, but not always. So it's not intended to make like a malicious way of like exploiting your device. Like, you know, the reasons are usually that either there are like new features that require more processing power, or the apps have like grown over the years, or that the older hardware basically struggles with like the new software. And then there's obviously the security improvements can which can like add a sort of like a overhead to the things, which ultimately slows down our devices over time. However, there has also been few controversial cases. For example, Apple reduced CPU performance on some older iPhones, which basically led to degradation of these batteries to prevent like unexpected shutdowns. But many of these users also interpret this as an intentional slowing, and Apple later sort of apologized and offered discounted battery replacements. And they also added like couple of features that let users see battery health and manage its performance. So the idea that every update is secretly slowing your phone isn't accurate, but there has been real instances where updates behavior becomes controversial. So can updates collect more data? Yes, they can if the app changes how they collect them. So, for example, an update might add analytics or request a new permission, like location or contacts, or introduce AI features that processes more information. So they have to change its privacy policies as well. That's why it's worth sort of paying attention when an app suddenly asks for permission it never needed before. All right. Zero-day vulnerabilities versus zero-day exploits versus zero-day attack. These are all three different things. I'll start with the vulnerability. A zero-day vulnerability is the security flaw itself. A zero-day exploit is the code or technique created to take advantage of that flaw. Uh, Zero-day attack is when it exploits it, like it just exploits it actually using real computers or to like the organizations or like towards an individual. So think of it like um yeah, think of it like a broken lock is a vulnerability, a lock picking is an exploit, and then the tool to break into the house is basically an attack, and that is where the robbery happens. So, who finds zero-day vulnerabilities? Zero-day vulnerabilities can be discovered by either ethical hackers, government agencies, cyber criminals, security researchers, or our software companies. But what happens next depends on who finds it first. So if an ethical researcher discovers the flaw, they usually report it privately to the software company so it can be fixed before attackers learn about it. And this whole process is also termed as responsible disclosure, which is also like a bug bounty program offered by the companies. Well, what is a bug bounty program? It's an amazing thing. All cybersecurity professionals should know it by default or must have heard about it. And more or less, in your day-to-day lives while using some apps, you must have definitely come through some of the bugs which you sort of didn't realize that could have been like, um, all right, not to exploit the companies for the money in a way like making money, like, well, these are all for educational purposes. Again, what we're learning is ethical. This is just knowledge sharing sessions, and Big Bounty program is an ethical way of you finding bugs and getting paid for the work that you have done. And it also helps the company and its users as well. So it's all a win-win situation. All right. So many companies do basically encourage researchers to report security flaws through something called a bug bounty program. Instead of hiding or selling the vulnerabilities, researchers responsibly report it to the company, and then the company verifies the issue, it fixes it, and it rewards the researcher with money. As simple as that. So, depending on how serious the vulnerabilities are, the rewards varies, and there's like different ranges to this. It can be hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars or even millions, especially for critical discoveries. And this helps companies improve their security while also giving either like, whoever the individual maybe, need a PhD specifically to figure out this, right? So, individual in a legal and ethical way to earn this reward. Well, what would be the real life examples? It could be your Windows, Apple iOS, Chrome, Android, MS Exchange, many more. If you go to any company's website and if they're offering bug bounty programs, it should be listed on their site, and you'd get more information on how much they pay, how they want the vulnerabilities that you just discovered to be documented because it all is like all different stuff too. All right. So you can't completely prevent the attack because the vulnerability is unknown, right? So it is yet to be discovered. But you can reduce the risk and keep your operating systems and apps updated. Install security patches as soon as they're released. You can also download software only from trusted sources. Also use reputable security softwares. And be cautious of those suspicious links that you get on emails, even if it's an attachment or just regular links or just an email, because attackers often combine these zero-day exploits with uh, phishing attacks. So, yeah. And then it brings us to a quick recap. Zero-day vulnerability is a software security flaw that the developers don't know, but no fix exists before it's been discovered. So attackers may exploit it before it's even patched once they discovered it. That would be a non-ethical approach of doing things, and I mean that basically classifies you as an uh, unethical hacker. Well, the vulnerability is the flaw. The exploit is the method used to abuse it. The attack is when it's used against real targets. So once a security update is released and installed, it's no longer considered a zero vulnerability. That's it. So if this video helped you understand what zero-day vulnerability means, give it a big thumbs up because it really encourages me to keep making videos like this. Like I had a long day, but I think it's just like fun to do this, and there's so much more to keep going on. So yeah, give it a big thumbs up, and I can see the stats and be pumped up. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.